because that's what it comes from. Get up early in the morning, going to the barn, doing their chores before they went to school, getting back on the school bus, going to school, come home, you got that to do again every day, and they did it every day.
Farming, driving bus, and in the seat of county government. Welcome to Pocono Mountains Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Jim Hamill, and this is the 14th episode of Season 4. I'm a Wayne County boy through and through, having grown up in Honesdale, which is the county seat. And as part of the Pocono Mountains, Wayne County has something different to offer than the rest of the Poconos in some regards, especially when it comes to farming. The agriculture industry is important, providing families with a way of life and our communities with local, healthy food. We've shared those stories of farms and farmers before on the podcast, from Calkins Creamery to Robinson Family Farm to Biolecki Farms, and even the Wayne County Fair and the 4-H clubs. No one is more of an advocate for those farms and farming than Wayne County Commissioner Brian Smith. He's the subject of July's Pocono Perspectives on our monthly show, premiering Sunday. We'll have a long-form conversation with Chris Barrett and Brian Smith in a bit. The Poconos is a year-round destination for millions of people with 2,400 square miles of rivers, lakes, forests, and mountains, and iconic family resorts as well as historic downtowns. It's the perfect getaway. You can always find out more on PoconoMountains.com or watch PTN, the Pocono Television Network, streaming live 24/7. Now, back to the episode. And it's a long one, but a good one. Brian Smith is passionate as they come. A family guy with a great amount of care for our community and for our heritage. He recently sat down with Chris Barrett for an episode of Pocono Perspectives. Here's the full, uncut version of that discussion. Enjoy.
Brian Smith, chair of the Wayne County Commissioners. What is a county commissioner and why is it an important role in local government?
So that's a big question, right? And everybody wants to know what that is. And basically what a county commissioner is the chief elected official, has 3 elected officials in the county that oversee the county budget. And it's really oversight and financial oversight of each department, and to make sure you develop a budget that's a responsible budget and then follow that budget every year so you don't get jammed up during the year with running out of money. And it's complicated because a lot of times in the spring, we have to take out a tax anticipation note because we run really a zero-based budget. So at the end of the year, there's not a lot of money left. So when you go into the next year in January, until you get tax dollars in, which happens about now in March, there's no money to run county government. So you take a tax anticipation note. That's a note to anticipate the tax that you're going to get in March. And then you pay that note off and you get the rest of the year out of your tax money.
Because the county can't print money. State can't print money.
Yeah,
right. So you have to really manage very closely. And what services you really oversee a lot of services for county residents, right?
Yeah, and so that's where, your elected officials actually do become more of just an financial oversight, because as a leader of the county, people should try to look at electing people who can represent them, their needs, their financial struggles, their ways of life, because that bleeds into the decision-making of a county commissioner when you're making decisions on what you do with different departments, what different programs you put into place, how those programs really affect the quality of life in the county. And a lot of people don't put together that the programs that we offer here at the county actually do protect our quality of life. We oversee the financials for courts and corrections. We do have a correctional facility. We do have people in probation who watch over those who are out on the street on probation. We have detectives who are fighting crime and trying to get people off the street who are dealing drugs. We have drug and alcohol. We have children and youth. Children and youth watches over the safety of children, and mental health, early intervention, again with children, behavioral health. So all of these services are in place to keep crime off the streets, keep drug off the streets, keep our quality of life, keep people safe. And it's really to protect your freedoms as an individual, because if you don't feel safe walking down the street or going to the supermarket or taking your family to the movies, your freedoms have been compromised. So everything we do here at the county, and like I said, most people don't relate to county government like that, but that's what it is. And so that person who's a county commissioner really does have to be able to represent people, put together what's needed in the community with the programs, and then be able to move those needs and those issues up the chain of command to our state government and sometimes to our federal government. So we're really a liaison of what happens locally to what needs to happen in state government with our senators and our House members, and then again through the senators and the Congress at the United States level. We have to be able to represent the same thing so that they can do their best to maintain freedom for the people of the United States.
What do you like best about being a county commissioner?
I like being able to serve the public. I like being able to recognize people who live hand to mouth. I was a dairy farmer by trade. I know what it's like to struggle financially. I know what it's like to watch agriculture struggle. And so one of my biggest pleasures is to be able to take those concerns and raise them up the flagpole, not only for the state of Pennsylvania, not only for the county itself, but how that pertains to national security on a national level. Because if we don't have people growing food in our own country, on our own soil, feeding our own people, we've compromised our national security. And I think that's a huge issue, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. So that's probably one of the favorite things I can do for the people who I'm concerned about in the agricultural field.
So I think when a lot of people think of the Poconos, we did a series about agriculture in Wayne County last year, and a lot of people don't realize how important agriculture is to the county. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, agriculture, if you go back to the beginning of Wayne County, and it started, I guess, back in 1798 maybe was the birth of Wayne County from Northampton County, under the name of General Anthony Wayne. And when Wayne County first started to get people coming to it, it wasn't even county yet. We're talking back in the 1700s, and part of Fort Delaware, Cushatunk Battlefield, is out in Wayne County, up along the northern borders of Wayne County, along the Delaware River. And Skinners came in there and started logging, and they were some of the first people who came into Wayne County. And so, logging is part of agriculture. Trapping furs is part of agriculture. The trees that they couldn't move, the huge hemlocks that they cut down, what they could move, they shipped into the city to help build the city itself with lumber, New York. And, the industry evolved to the point where they got a circular saw. They used the hemlocks then that they could then cut up for plank roads and keep people out of the mud. They were the heavily used roads. They called them plank roads. And then there was a man named McAdam that actually invented blacktop. And so we're kind of going on a rabbit hole with that one. But that all lent part of Wayne County to what they did with the trees. And they used the bark off the trees, the hemlock, for acid refineries to tan furs. And so, in the early years, and watching deforestation, lumber just disappeared into the city for building materials. And it got to the point where there was a lot of cleared ground. So what people did then is they transformed into animal agriculture, where they started milking cows. And again, we're in very close proximity to one of the biggest consumer groups in the world, between New York, New Jersey, Boston, Philadelphia. And so milk is something that at that point in time you needed to be able to move it quickly and close. And not only took care of our own county, but took care of a lot of those other very heavily populated places. And, the important thing to recognize with agriculture is every other species on the planet is limited in their numbers of existence because of their food supply. Humans have been able to grow numbers that are unbelievable compared to any other species because of agriculture and our ability to grow food and mass produce food, and we can feed our species. So that's what sets largely the human race apart from any other species on Earth. So, and then the evolution of agriculture got to the point where we had 1,700 dairy farms in Wayne County, and has now got to the point where the difficulty and the financial difficulty of running a farm, where we're down to about 30 dairy farms. So it's a big concern, and but it is part of our history. I think in the 1970s, FFA disappeared out of our schools. We now have FFA back in our schools again. I think it's important to teach kids about agriculture again, because we need the next generation getting on our farms and taking over and producing food. So that's a lot, I know. But
No, I remember someone said to me that because of building in Philadelphia, New York, almost the whole of Wayne and Pike County were denuded with trees. Yeah. So I never knew the second part of that story, that's how the dairy farms really rose from that, was from that. And I know we did one of the programs we did was on dairy farming, and the quality of the milk here and cheeses are used at a lot of Four Diamond restaurants in New York, from what I understand. So it's a very high quality agricultural product.
Yeah. Always have had a high quality agricultural product and still do. But I want to finish that up with the deforestation of our trees has resulted now in reforestation. I mean, through our planning department, we actually have, maps every so often that show that at one point in time it was completely deforested. But over the years, because of agriculture, because of best management practices, because of farms going out of business, the reforestation has got us back to where we have, once again, one of the greatest renewable resources of all times, and that's wood.
So the deforestation happened. Was the reforestation planned?
No. So reforestation, I think, is just maybe a result of not needing to cut so much wood anymore, and utilizing farms and agricultural fields that are mostly not on those steep grades that you can actually actively take crops off of, and so the steeper grades and hillsides that you can't farm, just reforested on their own. And so pasture land, where people don't take a crop, they just had herds of cattle. With the disappearance of the herds of cattle, those are reforesting too.
So the land started to reforest, and you talked about wood used for housing and fuel. So how did coal affect that too? And what was the history of coal here in Wayne County? Yeah,
so the needs of heat really is something that generated interest in the hills of the valley where they had coal. And people came from other countries who had the ability and the knowledge of mining coal, and recognized that there was a lot of anthracite over there for them to be able to mine. And so transportation became a big issue. So with the advent of that, in about 1829, they built a canal. It took them 3 years to build a canal from New York and New Jersey, the Hudson, all the way up to the northern terminus, which was Honesdale, where the canal brought coal, on canal boats back down to the city. Now, it wasn't just coal. At that time, the glass companies were big. So yeah, Dorflinger Glass Company is one of them, but there were many at that point in time. And what the boats would do is those boats would actually bring sand up to make glass, and Dorflinger would make a lot of the blanks for all the other glass companies, and then the other glass companies would make whatever bottles or, glassware they were capable of doing. But glass cutting became a huge thing here, which so you want to talk a little bit about the Gilded Age then, right? So, the industrialization of this country after the Civil War is something that really took off. People in other countries were having problems with the potato famine, not being able to make a living. They saw opportunity in the New World. There were jobs here, coal mining jobs, canal boat jobs, running the gravity railroad. So people came to this country from other countries in a great mass, and they began to industrialize this country. And at that point in time, after the Civil War, there was the ability to do that. People came here who were very ambitious, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts. There were skyscrapers built. There were things. Chicago became a And railroads became big, particularly under Carnegie. Chicago became a hub. There were skyscrapers there. The modern world was introduced to the United States, and a lot of things were going on. At that time, there was the gold rush, and that relates back to a guild. The guild is somebody who covers a piece of steel with precious metals, right, by definition. But, under Ulysses S. Grant, he sent Custer out to South Dakota because they heard that there was gold in South Dakota. Now we had just given South Dakota to the Indians, and there was a peaceful period there with the Indians because we gave them a big piece of land. But under Ulysses S. Grant, Custer was told to keep it quiet, just go see if there's gold there. Well, he didn't keep it quiet. He shot his mouth off. He reported back to one of the big papers in New York City. There was a big gold rush, made the Indians angry again. There started to be some big problems with the Indians. And ultimately, they sent people out on the railroad that was built, the first international railroad, and they, in mass, slaughter, killed all the buffalo mainly to control the Indians, and that put the kibosh on the Indians and got them to a point where they were starving and back on their reservations. But the railroad itself was something in the Gilded Age that became extorted by Carnegie because they were actually charging more, higher rates to use the railroad to move meat, to move all the wares back and forth to the west, because the western frontier had now really expanded across the prairie, and so antitrust laws needed to be put into place because of the monopolies that were in this country at the time, and those same antitrust laws are kind of antiquated now, but they're still in place, but tables of lawyers are able to shoot holes through them and do what they want to do now. But they were pretty functional at the time, and did kind of take down some of the big monopolies that were put into place. And but corruption ran rampant at that point in time, and workers were being extorted, being made to work longer hours, work harder. They became child labor, people that worked for the coal mines, particularly in our area. They belonged to the company store. There's stories of if your husband or your man died in the mine, they brought him to your house, they threw him on the porch, and the next day you sent your next eligible son to work in his place. And so the unions is what I'm getting at, started to become a big thing, labor unions, to kind of rein in some of the unlawful practices that were being forced on people as far as labor and labor practices. And they had a pretty important function at the time and brought things around to where people were treated a little bit more humane. But that whole time, that Gilded Age, was really a time when our country was able to be built up, be industrialized, and with the advent of coal and energy, it really made us ultimately a superpower in the world.
So you talked about railroads, and Wayne County has a real interesting history with railroads, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, so we're home of the American Railroad, and we're pretty proud of that because, the Stourbridge line, or Stour Bridge is how it was first pronounced, came from England as an engine that was going to be the new head of the industrialization, be able to haul freight around, and so it landed in Wayne County here ultimately. They hooked it up. It was on a wooden track. Ultimately, the engine was an engine that was a grasshopper design and was very functional. And actually, he left town, went out on the rail, and everybody laughed and thought it was all over, but he came back, which proved it out to be something that was functional. The rail being made of wood was not a rail that they could be, could continue to be used, and they recognized that. So ultimately they went to iron rails, and they continued to get bigger and bigger engines that would haul more and more freight. But the birthplace of that is right here in Wayne County, and we still have a replica of the Stourbridge line.
So where could people see that today if they wanted to see that?
So there's a replica of the Stourbridge line right in the northern terminal of the Delaware and Hudson Canal building on Main Street in Honesdale. And, That's really something that people should go see. That's what I like to say is that's where it all started. They have artifacts from the glass companies in there. They give you a really good rendition of history from the time Wayne County started to our modern day. And I mean, there's a lot of things in there that even local people don't take the opportunity to go see, and they really should, because putting it all together is something that we should all be trying to do, you know.
And we talked a little too about door flingers. I want to talk just about that because it kind of was around the Gilded Age and the, I guess, 1870s, and some of the things you talk about 1870s, 1880s, right after the Civil War. Glass making was a lot different back then, right? Was a lot different than what it is today.
Sure, yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because when we talk history, my family's a big part of history here. I have my great-great-grandfather came to the United States in 1851 from Germany on my dad's side. His name was Big John Schmidt. Changed his name to Smith to be more American, to get jobs. And my mom's people, she's... Yeah. Yeah. So, and my mom's people were Irish. In the old country, they were Brennan. They came here and became Branning. And Iram Branning came in about the same year, 1851, both of whom worked for Dorflinger Glass. In fact, as Dr. Barb did a book with Mr. Reed, and in that book, you could see my great-grandfathers on each side of a company picnic standing on a porch, and they took a photograph of their workers that day. And he gave me a signed copy of that book because it has both of my great-grandfathers that are standing there, which I thought was pretty interesting, but illustrates, you know, how in the 1850s, yeah, and illustrates how people came from other countries, and they came to the United States and landed here because there were jobs, and it was a great thing.
So you talked about the potato famine in Ireland, and that was due to a fungus, correct? And that's why a lot of Irish folks immigrated here during that time period. The millions did, correct?
Yeah. And so, you know, that again with the Gilded Age, that added to the diversity here in the United States. People came from China, people came from Ireland, people came from Germany. And really, any ambitious person in a country that was able to get out of their country and come here, if you had, you know, a sound mind, strong back, and good hands, and were willing to work and had some ambition, this was the land of opportunity, you know. And they came here in droves and really changed the world here as we knew it.
Talk a little bit more about Dorflingers. You talk about your grandfather's working there, and take us through the 1870s and 80s. And we did a piece on Dorflingers, which is really interesting. They did a lot of the glass services for the White House, correct?
Yeah, and I don't know the intricacies of the history so much with Dorflinger, only that, you know, they really were an important company of their time. Some pretty fantastic work came out of there. They had some of the greatest glass cutters in the world. It's still on display in most of the museums around the United States. Wherever glass cutting is displayed, you'll see something from Dorflingers. You know, they were cutting edge, and they brought people from other countries who really were just fantastic masters of cutting glass.
And they were real craftsmen back then, right?
Yeah.
They handcrafted all.
Yep, handcrafted, and they took a lot of pride. So those people who were master glass cutters took a lot of pride in what they did, and did it, you know, masterfully. So it's something that really, if you go to the Dorflinger Museum now, a man named Jim Estelstein has really done a great job in re-outfitting the factory to get it back to where it was. It's a great illustration of what they did, how they did it, and why. And I would suggest anybody, if you come to Wayne County, please go see that museum. It's fantastic.
It is. It's very, very well done. You also talked a little bit too about the NH Canal. So I wanted to, because that was all happening about the same time. Mm-hmm. And what was the D&H Canal, and what can you see of it today?
So the Delaware and Hudson Canal was something that, again, was, I think, masterminds of some engineers. And one thing I like to illustrate about the D&H Canal was it was built in 3 years by hand, largely. And today it'd probably take you that long to get a permit to build a huge 1 acre complex. But it was important at the time, and there was the main rivers coming through Honesdale, our county seat, the Dyeberry River and the Lackawaxen River merged right at the top of Honesdale, and they were used as a feeder for the canal. There were dams built here to flood the canal, and there's also feeder ponds out around the countryside that were used to feed that canal in the event that they needed water. So, again, it was of its time just extraordinary for men to be able to put together how you operate a canal, how you use those canal boats, how you keep it full, how you utilize the lock houses where they how you put together a roebling bridge, right, where you actually flood a bridged area and take a boat across. So, the engineers of their time were just unbelievable in the ability to think, calculate, and put something in place that works. When you just look at the gravity railroad, I mean, that's so amazing that they could put together the light track and the heavy track and have the planes so that they really just take a railroad from point A to point B with gravity. So it's amazing. And that in itself created a situation in Honesdale where at one point in time we had the biggest mound of coal in the world right here in Honesdale waiting to be loaded on coal boats. And, there are a lot of books you can read, coal boats to, I think it's coal boats to something. I think round out is what they called it. But anyway, if you go to the library and look up, books that you can read about the D&H Canal and coal itself and energy, it's all written, and it's all written about right here.
So did the canal mostly haul coal, or was it?
So the canal actually hauled stone. They hauled mortar. They hauled, two different directions. They would go down with a full boat and come back with a full boat. You couldn't contaminate coal and you couldn't contaminate the sand, which was a particular situation for the sand that Dorflinger used because they would not put that sand on a coal boat. Because if they did, you got any coal dust in your sand, the carbon, when you heated it up, would start to explode and ignite and blow holes in your glass. So those sand boats were primarily used just for sand and the sand that went to Dorflinger. But yeah, a lot of history there. Very interesting.
So the railroad, because the railroads really replaced the canals, right? Is kind of
the railroad did replace the canal, and so freight largely, and I'd like to say this first of all, if you look at freight in the United States of America, we are largely a maritime transportation country, right? So when you think about moving freight and you think about moving it on water, that's something that not only happened in the big rivers, but happened on these smaller rivers too, because they would cut timber and they would make boats, and even when there wasn't a canal, they would float freight down the river to get it to the city where they could. So the natural grade of the land was something where there's a river, you could put a railroad, because it's not that difficult to follow a river and know that it's going at a grade to where it's going to get to the cities at some point in time. So the natural following of the river with the railroad was perfect, and the railroad really got to take over for the canal and take over for the gravity railroad. And we had a railroad here that's Stourbridge Line, and it's a railroad that was pretty important to the industries here. Even when I was a child and a young man, we had the textile industry, Cotz's Underwear, they used the railroad. More Business Forms used the railroad. American Wire and Rope used the railroad. Chroma Tube used the railroad. Bailey's Furniture used the railroads. And when I was a kid, the feed companies here hauled feed in on the railroad. So it was a freight railroad. And still, there's a connection down there in Port Jervis where they could get freight in and they could get freight out. It's just that it becomes more and more difficult all the time, and the agreements become more difficult. And it's really primarily now a railroad that is an excursion for people to experience what it was like on one of the first railroads in the United States. And it's the Sturbridge line now. Yeah, the Sturbridge line now. And so it's no longer the Sturbridge line. They call it the Sturbridge line. And but they do. I mean, the people that have it now, they're the real deal. Tom Miles, his son Mike Keefe, they son-in-law Mike Keefe, they have a railroad that's beautiful. It's painted. They painted all the cars. They've done the interior on the cars. They have heat in the wintertime. They have air conditioning in the summertime. And these guys are hooked up all over the nation, and they're known as railroad people. And, you know, the ability for them to get cars, to replace cars, to get the parts for cars, to rebuild engines, they do all that right down here on Brown Street. So it's really, we're lucky that we have an operator like we have now. And it really is an excursion that people should try to come here and take.
And it's really great because when you look at the trains, I think the F7 is painted in Pennsylvania livery. So that would have been something you would have seen back in the 40s and 50s, right when the Pennsylvania Railroad was huge.
Yeah.
And the president's car, I guess, actually was a president's car at one time, the passenger car. I believe Roosevelt was the last president that used it. So there's some great historical pieces in his collection.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can ride on a piece of history, which is amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And just to go in that car, you know, it's awesome. So I would recommend anybody who comes to Honesdale or comes to Wayne County to make sure you experience that railroad.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. But so we talked a little about the D&H and the canal. So we talked a little bit about the railroad. And so now we get into the 1900s and into even to this century. How did Wayne County change? Or has it changed, do you think?
Well, so the one beautiful thing about this place is it hasn't changed that much, you know, but when you start peeling those layers back, you do start to see changes that have happened that are challenges for county government. They're challenges for the people of the county, in as much as that, you know, we watched the disappearance of more business forms. The textile industry disappeared from Wayne County. Again, Chroma Tube stopped using tubes in television, so that disappeared. American Wire and Rope disappeared. Bailey's Furniture disappeared. You know, lots and lots of jobs just went by the wayside, as well as those dairy farms. We had 1,700 dairy farms. Those people were employed. They're working. Their families were working, and we were down to 30. So, you know, there's a big change. I think some of it is evolution, you know, and things are always going to change. But agriculture in itself is something that needs to change. We need beef in this country. We're short of beef in this country right now. I guess like a 10% shortage overall of beef. And we in Wayne County can grow some of the greatest warm weather grasses in the world. And so our animal to acreage ratio is something where we can have one beef cow to an acre of land, and they can't have that out west.
Can you talk about that? I've never heard that before. The grass. What does that mean?
So that means we have a climate that's stable enough that these warm weather grasses grow, and they grow early in the spring and they grow late in the fall, and we can produce hay like no other place in the United States, really, and it's not as volatile. You know, when you get out west and you start thinking about their climate, they can have fires that just burn their hay off. They can have droughts that just keep their crops from growing, and those are acreages that create a huge problem. You know, when you have millions of acres of hay that get burned up, or millions of acres that have a drought and can't grow, that affects how many head of cattle they can have in the West. But here, even if we have a dry year, we still have grass. Even if we have a wet year, we still have grass. We don't have the forest fires that are out of control like they have out west. And so we have a stable enough climate here where things are stable. And again, we can grow beef here and need to grow beef here. And so with the disappearance of the dairy industry, which largely fed the beef industry, we really need to get back to growing more and more beef right here in the Northeast. So first of all, we're close again to that consumer base. And second of all, we have that stable climate.
Why do you think there's a shortage like of 10%?
Excuse me. Well, I think there's a shortage because of the very things that we're talking about, and the economics of it. If you're somewhere where you have to buy your feed, buy your hay, and try to grow animals, the economics don't work. You really got to be able to have mouths to the grass and watch them grow on grass, and we can do that here.
Do you feel that agriculture will always be a big part of the economy here?
I do, and so that's an effort, right? And that's one of the things we've got in place, working with our schools. We have an ag curriculum in our schools. We got FFA back in the schools, and we're working on what we call an ag innovation center, where we're going to try to take that one step further. I'm going to start coughing. I have to get dry. I might have to get some water out in the hall.
I did do one too. Thank you. Just start over from where you were before.
Yeah, so, agriculture is an ongoing effort here in Wayne County. I think that, we have an aging population of people who own the ground. One of the biggest obstacles we're going to have to overcome, and it's not just here, it's through the state of Pennsylvania and nationally, is the cost of land. And I like to relate that back to when my great-great-grandfathers came to the United States. They were given land. They had a land grant of 650 acres. But over time, the amount of people there are and the amount of available acreages they are, and that ratio has changed to where land isn't free. Land started to cost money. Land continues to cost more money. And, it's to a point now where if a young person wants to buy a farm, it's almost impossible. They need to have somebody working with them. There needs to be things put into place, leasing options. And, we have to change the mindset. And again, this is education, right? So this is why we need our schools involved in this whole process. The Amish population looks at land, and wherever it's available, wherever they have part of their population, they'll buy it, no matter what the cost. And they have the philosophy that they're doing that for 3-4 generations out. So, we were always raised by conservative people who said, don't go into debt more than you have to go into debt. Pay it off as soon as you can pay it off. Save your money for a rainy day. This is from people who came through the Depression. They watch people lurchen. They watch people struggle financially. But there is that philosophy that if you want to be a farmer, you got to start planning for your family 3-4 generations out. So you need to get in the game. You need to buy the ground, or make the investment to start purchasing the ground, and know that it's going to take a couple generations to get that farm paid off, but eventually that land will be in agriculture with an agricultural family, and it's working for the Amish, and it needs to start working for the rest of the population.
So you have a young gentleman working for county government that his family is in farming, and we did a piece on him. He was really progressive in what he talked about. He talked about some of the same things that you did, about looking at it generationally, and bringing more science into agriculture.
Yep.
Water usage.
Mm-hmm.
That was really interesting, because he talked about how much each tomato plant would need to thrive and to be more fruitful.
Yep.
So there's a lot more science to agriculture than what people think.
Well, yeah, and so that evolution is getting to these people who want to bring more science in, who want to bring more technology in, and can, produce and intensively produce on small acreages of land with the science of high tunnels. So even though we live in a climate where, early growing seasons are difficult, once you put up high tunnels and you utilize the sun for heat and you can really control your environment a little bit better, you begin to be able to produce not only more, but higher quality.
And the Balicki farm is interesting with hydroponics. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So they took us all through that and showed us how that happens. So there's a lot being done here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of experimentation too.
Yeah.
And really great stuff being grown.
Yeah. And Bielecki's, he's a good friend of mine. He's actually growing fish now, doing trout, and takes them to farmers markets, So he's pretty innovative in himself, and it's a good model for young people to look at to be able to get into agriculture and acknowledge that maybe they don't need 300, 400, 500 acres. They can get into agriculture and be productive and be profitable on a much smaller piece of property and then grow from there.
So what's your background? Like, where did you go to school? You've always lived here, right?
Yeah, so my mom worked at Cotz's factory a little bit, and then she was a seamstress in Cotz's department store on Main Street. My dad worked at More Business Forums. He was a lift truck mechanic. I went to high school right here in Honesdale. When I got out of school, I couldn't wait to get out of here. I went to Penn State University over in Scranton, and I got a degree in electrical engineering technology. I had an opportunity right out of school to work on nuclear submarines down in Newport News, Virginia. So I went down there, and I was only there a year, and I actually, on a trip home, met the girl that I would eventually marry. And happy to come back home. But, that's something that I think is a great experience for anybody. Get out of your hometown. Learn a little bit about small town life, other places. And I began to recognize come back to Wayne County is probably your best option. I get a little emotional about it, but really it's one of the best places in the world to grow up, work, raise a family, and retire. So I can't say enough about this county.
Because it's a real hometown environment.
Yeah.
And you're safe here. Everybody's so friendly. The experiences are really great. It has a great history.
Yeah.
And
so, you're asking me a little bit about myself. So after growing up here and coming back here, I worked at the hospital as a biomed technician for 7 years. But while I was doing that, I also started a dairy farm of my own. My wife and I bought a farm. We milked cows on that small farm for 5 years. I bought a bigger farm out in Damascus. Started to get a couple of school bus contracts. Never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever get into politics. But at a certain point in time, I had, 6 children, a dairy farm, 2 school bus contracts, was struggling financially, because I knew I had to send kids through college. We were making ends meet, but living hand to mouth, and listening to the struggles of the other farmers in the area. There was an election. I started looking at the other candidates that were running for this position. I recognized that I could at least accurately represent the struggles of agriculture. I didn't see that blue-collar candidate in any other candidate that was running. All good people. I never put anybody down that ran for this, and I still won't. But thought that there was some direct application of my life and my concerns and my struggles with a vast majority of the other farmers in the area. So I ran for election, and the first time I lost by 100 and some votes. And after that, I did get elected. I ran again, and in 2008, I became a county commissioner. So I'm in my 17th year now as county commissioner, and still very much enjoy it and feel like it's I have a good application here. I don't think every commissioner needs to be from agriculture or have that blue-collar background, which actually is the beauty of the county commissioners when you have a diverse group. They represent different issues, different concerns, different populations, and I think we have that here. And we all do work very hard to just address all the issues for the betterment of the people. We're not politically that divided, and just try to take every issue. And although we may not agree in the onset of an issue, because I'll have my solution, Jim will have his solution, Joss has a solution, by the time we're done reading, by the time we're done debating, by the time we're done trying to do the best we can do for the population, we'll come to an agreement that all of us can agree this is the best way forward. And so those are the kind of leaders we have here, and I'm proud of that.
So Jim and Josh being the other 2 commissioners, because it's a 3-county board, yes, and you as the chair.
3-person, just 3 people, county commissioner. I'm the chair. I've been the chair since I got elected. But always been very proud of the relationship the county commissioners have here. And even though we don't agree, and argue, I tell people, if you're married, you probably argue with your wife. That doesn't mean you don't love her. That doesn't mean that you can't, go to bed at night and be happy to see her again tomorrow. And I feel the same way about all my friends. I argue with my friends often, but I like them, and I still like them. And tomorrow's another day, But you can work together and get some really good things done for your population that you serve. If you just have an open mind, you're willing to listen and have some respect for the people that you work with and be able to bend once in a while. I have hardcore beliefs, but I know that there's a compromise that has to be in place to get things done. And if you're willing to compromise enough to see to it that you have a positive outcome, you have a great equation for success.
So you said you had six children?
Yeah.
How old are they?
My oldest child is 38. My youngest child is 28. And now I have 16 grandchildren and one more on the way. So, yeah. And they all live within 10 miles of my farm.
I was going to ask you, they all stay in Wayne County.
Yeah.
That's great.
And they're all, gainfully employed. So I count my blessings, but they're good kids and they learn to work hard. I feel bad that they worked as hard as they did, but that was necessary on the farm. I've had people say to me that come here to farm, what did you do for labor? Well, we had children and they had to work. That's how we got it done. But that's how a lot of other farmers got it done too.
But they have a good work ethic, I would think, from that. Yeah. So that's a positive thing.
Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on them and I'm very proud of them. But that's what it comes from, getting up early in the morning, going to the barn, doing their chores before they went to school, getting back on the school bus, going to school, come home, you got that to do again every day, and they did it every day. And I think we need that work ethic in this country.
Oh my gosh, what type of cattle is it Holstein?
Yeah, we had Holsteins.
So how many do you have now?
I don't have the Holsteins now. So we went through a transition where our farm, Amy and I kept half the herd when we decided we wanted to see some of our kids take over. The kids took over half the herd, and one married couple, my daughter and her husband, tried it with us for a while. They then decided they couldn't make a living at it. And again, Amy and I did not charge them rent. We did not expect them to buy equipment. We did all that. It's just the fact that it's become so difficult for a young family to get into agriculture and actually be sustainably, economic sustainability. So, we watched two of them just decide they couldn't do it. Another couple of my children decided they wanted to try it. We did the same thing for another few years with them. And right around 2018, we all decided that, we'll just sell the cows. And so we sold our milk cows and started having beef, and we've been doing beef cattle and horses. So right now I've sold off my herd last year, had the ability to sell them a lot through IGA, some direct marketing, and so I'm starting herd over again right now with Wagyu. I have a Wagyu bull. So we're going to have Kobe beef. It's that beef that has, a little bit of marbling through the meat. I'm not completely sold on it myself yet, but certainly a new technology and a new innovative way to try to get a product that's worth a little bit more with the same amount of work.
So you do ride horses a lot?
Yeah, I ride horses. My family rides horses. My grandchildren now are involved in 4-H and the equine. In fact, they just got back from Penn State for learning about judging horses. And so, it's a good hobby, but it's not just a hobby. It's become kind of a business. So there's probably more horses right now in Wayne County than there has been since people started using tractors, But I have a big team of work horses that I love very much. We use them just primarily for recreation, but, it's all a learning experience too, and it's responsibility and it's consequence. The kids are learning. If I don't take care of my animal doesn't do well. So with all those grandchildren and all being close to the farm, we also have pigs, and we're going to have lambs, and we have baby horses, and there's just always a lot going on there. Chaos is a big part of my life.
To me, I'm guessing it sounds like being a county commissioner is an incredible amount of pressure. You enjoy it and you love it, but it sounds like the farm is kind of where you're at home the most, to me, right?
That's where I really unwind. But at the same time, with the advent of the modern day cell phone, you're never any further from your constituents than a phone call away, and I give my phone number out to everybody, and people call me, and they call me all hours, and I'm glad they do. It's really made our county something that is much smaller in your ability to communicate. There was and still is a mindset out there that we have this north and south distance that's created such a problem to communicate with your county commissioner, but that begins to dissipate when you have my phone number and you can call me up and say, hey, what's going on with this, And even last night, now it's Sunday night, I had a friend of mine call me and say, hey, there's a piece of legislation going through that I'm concerned about. Could you talk to the senator? So I called Senator Lisa Baker this morning. I passed on that concern. It's not the first concern she's heard, but I'll also talk to our representatives today when I'm done talking with you. And it's a way that people can immediately have the ability to address their concerns with the person that they've elected to represent them.
And their voice is really heard.
Yeah.
And that just shows how you pass that right up to the Senate.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think I love spending time with you. Really, Brian, I do. But got to ask you one last question, and hopefully this is a good one. Where do you see Wayne County in the next few decades?
So, well, I'll say this. I'm very encouraged about Wayne County, where we're at and where we're going. I think that there's a lot that's going to happen here in the near future. Broadband is something that is incredibly important anymore to people who are moving into the area, and even to those who are here for most of their lives or all of their lives, because everybody wants to have that latest technology where instant access is something that they can get, whether it's how you're working on an ATV in a garage, or how you're working in agriculture on your farm, to how do I graft an apple branch on an apple tree. All these things are things that all you have to do is get on your phone, either look up Penn State app or go to a YouTube app, and immediately, you can see somebody doing it right in front of your eyes, and you know how to accomplish that task. And I see that becoming more and more a part of our modern life. I don't know that that's the greatest thing in the world, but it certainly is here and is part of our evolution and how we're going to move forward. I see our children getting in school, and we're talking more and more about having a career and technical center. I think that's going to happen, where we're going to watch children getting out of school, going into the trades, and immediately being able to become an active member of society, where they can buy a house, buy a car, raise a family, and not be buried in debt by college. I think we still have great opportunities for those students who are academically inclined, who want to go to college and be a lawyer. In fact, we need attorneys here. If you look at the average age of an attorney, they're aging out and they need replacements. And so I see huge, huge opportunities here in this area for all kinds of people, all kinds of businesses. It wasn't that long ago when we attracted Sudfin Fire Company to come here and make fire trucks right here in Wayne County. And, with watching the pressure in the cities and people wanting to live a rural life in a beautiful place with, clean water, good food, and some outdoor recreation, we're going to be where it's at for a huge amount of people. And the one thing that everybody I talk to, the one thing they want is inexpensive taxes and, cost of living to be low. And that's a double-edged sword, because those people who tell me, I don't want to see our county become populated, are also the people that say they want to keep their costs down. But what makes your county appealing is, the quality of life that we do have and low cost. And relative to other areas, our taxes are low. And relative to other areas, we have a great quality of life. And the outdoor recreation aspect of living in Wayne County is just second to none. So we're poised for some great things in the future. And I would always, as a county commissioner, rather be in charge of guiding growth than managing a loss. So I think we're, positioned for that growth. It's something that you want to do cautiously, and this is a county that I love. It's where my kids are, and so I'm excited about it.
Well, Brian, thanks for spending time with us. We learned a lot. And we were with Brian Smith. He's chair of the Wayne County Commissioners. He spent some time with us talking about the great things in Wayne County here in the Pocono Mountains. And I'm Chris Barrett for Pocono Perspectives. This can't happen without you. Thanks for watching.
Farming and preserving a way of life in Wayne County here in the Poconos with Brian Smith, part of our agri-legacy of the Northern Poconos. Find out more at PoconoMountains.com. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We'll have a new episode each week highlighting lots of the fun things you can experience while you're visiting the Poconos. Come visit us. Plan your trip today.